musician. I mean, I don't even know if I could say I'm a vocalist as much as I am just a performer. I guess when I play, I'm like of like the I feel like there's a movement today between a lot of young musicians to show up, and there's nothing wrong with this. I think it's just a stylistic choice to show up in like your chucks and like a t-shirt and like play a song. I'm of like I think like an old school where the show is a show, and so you dress up there like show clothes, and you show up and you kind of, there's like a sensational aspect to it. I don't know, that's my philosophy. But stylistic, it's no right or wrong. Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm a history major with a concentration in peace and justice studies, and I love to listen to and perform for audiences everywhere cosmic American music. I've always loved stories. My favorite songs have always been stories. If it's a love story or a murder ballad, I've just always liked the idea of characters, and stories are oftentimes rooted in very interesting environments, settings. So, and I grew up also around a lot of old people, grandparents, great-grandparents, and one of the ways that children who are like 8, 9, 10 years old can talk to people who grew up in the 1920s, 80 years apart, is through stories. So I kind of naturally just gravitated towards the folk genre because folk music is usually rooted in stories. Back before recording equipment was how people communicated, was through song. So it seemed like a natural fit. I started getting really into it when I was 16. I had what I tell people is my early life crisis. I went to a concert, and it was two guys from the band Old Crow Medicine Show who had that song Wagon Wheel that everybody, and that's the only song I knew. It's why I went, was to hear them play that one song. And I realized that the music they were doing was really cool, and it was all acoustic. They weren't plugging anything in. And so I went out like the next week and bought like a banjo and harmonicas and a really crappy fiddle. And I sounded horrible for about a year. And then I came here and kept practicing in my room. And that's kind of how it started, though, was the synthesis of my interest in just stories and old things with the discovery of this music. And I'd taken piano lessons classically. And I'd played like ragtime piano since I was like 6. So I'd had like a musical background. So it was mainly a synthesis of the two. It's been a couple different things. But from a social standpoint, it's a good way to meet people. I've met a lot of people through playing music here. Like I lived in the international dorm, Catawba, my freshman and sophomore year. But as a freshman coming here, I didn't know anybody. Nobody from high school was here. And Catawba, it was kind of all the other students were in the same situation, coming from across the world. They didn't know anybody. And we would oftentimes end up on weekends hanging out together, and music was a part of that. Like one of the first things we did as a group in Catawba was go to Floyd at the country store on a Friday night, which is a very kind of folk country scene. And music was very helpful socially and getting to know people and getting established and feeling settled. That was freshman year, and then sophomore year became more part of what I was doing academically. When I changed I was actually originally an economics major, and then I changed to history, and I started thinking, well, maybe I can incorporate the music, which is historic music, into what I'm doing, what I'm studying. Yeah.
So how did you do that?
Okay, yeah, that's yeah. I guess I should. For one of the core courses for the history major is methods of research, and that's about a 20 to 25 page paper, where the student chooses the topic and researches it, and one of the things I immediately knew I wanted to write about was folk music. I didn't know specifically what, because there's a lot of things you could write about. You could write about folk music in the Civil War. You could write about, you could contrast Western cowboy folk music with Southern blues. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. I chose to write about, it was, Pete Seeger had recently died. I mean, he's only been dead for about 2 years, but Pete Seeger was kind of in my mind. I'd been up to the area where he lived, and he was very influential, I knew, in the civil rights movement. So he was kind of still a part of living memory. And I decided to write my paper, 20 to 25 pages on the experiences of Pete Seeger and the Red Scare, because I knew that a lot of folk singers had been pointed out as communists, had been accused of anti-American activities, and so I wanted to examine that. It was really interesting, because I expected it to be a lot about music, and it was, but within the music was a whole web of political connections, and I mean, because I'm reading protest songs, and I was reading protest songs. There were songs that were, well, Pete Seeger said every song's a protest song, but anyway, mainly protest songs and ballads from Soviet Russia, from Appalachia. Anyway, it was really neat. It was very interdisciplinary. There have been a couple different moments specifically. I can't think of one singular moment. One of them was in high school, before I came to Roanoke, when I was just doing a lot of music on my own, and I was just so wrapped up in it. I didn't know what I was doing exactly. I hadn't had any formal folk training, which I think is the point of folk music. You're not trained, you just do it. Then, let's see, I got here, and I started doing the open mics on campus, and I was having a lot of fun with those. Those were a lot of fun. And I had a radio show every week where I could kind of get on the airwaves and infect the airwaves with my music. Not my music, but the music that I listened to. And at some point, through a combination, I think, of performing around campus and people kind of remembering me, people started coming up to me actually and saying, like, oh, you're Banjo Daniel, or they remember by the instruments, like, you're Fiddlin' Dan. I had a couple memories of that. In fact, one happened today, which was interesting. But through a combination of those campus experiences, there came a point when I started to think, this could be something. I could do something with this. And I think the one moment where it all came together was last spring. I was in a computer lab in Olin, and a classmate, he wasn't in my class, but he was a year ahead of me, but a classmate here at Roanoke, William O'Brien, passed by, and he had heard that I played music, and I kind of knew him from around campus. We'd talked a few times, but he was trying to start his own record label, his own recording studio. And so he came in and knew that I did music, and he said, well, you do folk music, and I need people to record songs that are in the public domain, because I don't want to deal with royalties and all that, which happens to be what I was doing at the time. So if there's one moment that was kind of pivotal, I would say that was it. And we ended up making a CD out of that one interaction in his basement. He recorded it, and we had another student did photography and another student did graphic design. So through that one interaction, I had a CD come out of it, which was nothing if not a Roanoke College product. Yeah, it makes me happy.
So tell me about that. Why did it make you happy?
And this, it's interesting. A lot of the songs that I listen to and a lot of the songs I play are, they're not all happy songs. A lot of them are really sad, but there's something really therapeutic to me about the songs. And I think part of it is that they come from a real place within the human experience. Especially music like the blues comes from a very sad, very serious place usually, but it's therapeutic to play it. When I play it for other people also, like the blues for instance, there's like a formula to it where you state the problem, you maybe state it a third time, and then you either give like a resolution to the problem or like an ironic spin, which is kind of like a punchline. And usually the people who are listening that I'm playing for aren't expecting it. And it's so rewarding to see the reaction, like the laugh or the smile. And that's what I enjoy most, is the performance and interacting with the audience and seeing, like there's this one song I play that's about this guy who keeps trying to find a wife. And he can't find a wife because he learns from his father that every girl he brings home is actually his sister. Like his father's had all these kids. And he goes to his mom and he says, Mom, I'm never gonna get married. And his mom says, well, your dad's not your real dad. He thinks he is, but he's not. So you can really marry whoever you want. And so to sing that song and then see people's reactions is it's almost like nothing else. It's like nothing else that I really get to experience. So just thinking about it and talking about it is so much fun. Especially people my age who are just so unaccustomed to this kind of music, because there's no blaring bass. It's not a lot of frills. It's just an instrument and the words. So to be that vessel is really cool. It's a lot of fun.
Listen to me.
Yeah. I should have brought my guitar.
So question, switching gears a little bit.
Mhm.
So back to your major here, and you decided on
Mhm.
history. So did you not come in as a history major? Why history?
No. I came in as an economics major, pretty much convinced that if I did anything else, I wouldn't make any money. I don't know why. I do think a lot of people my age here at school have that mentality. Because I remember I wasn't alone. I would talk to people and I'd say, "What are you majoring in?" When I was a freshman, I'd talk to juniors and seniors who had already been through the process of picking a major, and I'd say, "Why did you major in that?" And they said, "Well, I want to have a job." And so economics is what I got steered towards, because I don't enjoy math enough to do physics, and I like politics, and there's some politics in economics. Anyway, so I pretty soon realized that I'd rather fail at something I love than succeed at something that's just not for me. Which I don't even know if you'd call it success if you do well at something you hate. I don't know. That's a bigger question. But what was the question again?
So you're talking about what you love, and
Yeah.
you turned to history.
Yeah, I turned to because history is just a canon of stories, and I've always loved stories, and I was just raised that way, being around. I think mainly it was being around people who were at least 2 generations above me, grandparents, great grandparents, a lot of stories, and the history department here is. They're not paying me to say this. We have a really good history department here. Every class I've had it has been a wonderful experience. The professors are always willing to talk to you. The experience you get in the history department is, there's a lot of research. It's not very much regurgitation, which is not always easy, but it's really interesting. And I think I've retained a lot more that way because it's research-based and it's not regurgitation for a test. And it's interesting, when I decided to become a history major, and when I started including the things that I was already doing, like the music or writing, or just the things that I was doing already on my own time that I would have done anyway, things started falling into place. So like the Fulbright experience, that would not have happened, and this is not, economics is a great discipline, but it wouldn't have happened for me had I been studying economics, because there wasn't, I don't know, when I picked history, I already had so many interests that I was able to weave in. I couldn't have weaved in folk or music to economics. I don't know how that would have worked. And so when I picked history, everything fell into place, and I was, I think, just a much stronger student and a stronger applicant in an interesting way for things like that.
You mentioned the Fulbright.
Yeah.
I mentioned to you that I was interested in that. How did with the Fulbright?
It's an amazing, it's an amazing story.
Scotland.
It was Scotland. I was a freshman economics major, and I actually had planned to either minor or double major in history. I was taking some history classes, and I had Dr. Shu for one of my 100 level histories. And she said, I guess she read one of my papers and said, "You should go. We have this we have a good system of like helping kids get scholarships, and kind of helping them prepare and fill out applications, and doing editing. And you should look and see if you can get the information for contacting Professor Jenny Rostai," who I did that year. And the deadlines had already passed that year, my freshman year, so there wasn't a chance that I was going to apply. But Professor Rostai said, "Well, let's try again next year." And my sophomore year comes around, and I was still an economics major. And the way the Fulbright thing is set up is they have 8 or 9 different programs, and they're all different themes. One of them is environmental science, one of them is archaeology. They have one on the slave trade, and they have the Scotland one, just different ones. They have a Shakespeare one. And the one I was originally applying for was in England for environmental economics. And I just have no background in environmental economics. and I was a horrible applicant. I think we went through 4 or 5 different drafts of like applications and essays and personal statements, and I think, I know I lost a lot of sleep, and she drank a lot of coffee, Professor Rosta did, during that interval. So we finally, it was like a come to Jesus moment, to invoke a religious metaphor. She said something's got to change, and so I switched majors. And she was like, well, why, she was like, why did you become a history major? And I think what I told her was I like old people. And from that statement, I was able to use all the experiences I'd had up to that point, from playing in nursing homes, sharing folk music in nursing homes, to playing on sidewalks, to talking with my great-grandfather, all these stories that it kind of accumulated but weren't to that point relevant with what I'd been studying. They wouldn't have helped me if I'd been applying as an economics major. They suddenly became relevant. And there was kind of a synergy between my life and what I was hoping to study and go to Scotland for. And that's how I got to Scotland. And once I was there, I was able to, the theme was cultural identity and cultural studies. So we spent a lot of time touring castles and going to museums. But we also had free time, and especially like in Edinburgh, where I would go to pubs with a lot of old Scottish men and play music. And I expected to be playing a lot of like Irish or Scottish or just kind of Celtic tunes, but I played more Johnny Cash there than I play here. They listen, a lot of their music is influenced by American country music, which is interesting because that's the only thing that's on TV there. But I played a lot of music in Scotland. So
How was the experience of performing in Scotland different from here? I mean, how would you describe it?
that's interesting. The sense I got, and it actually has to come down to the weather, because there's a lot of rain and a lot of clouds. It's not always nice to be outside in England or in the United Kingdom. So a lot of people go indoors to pubs. And there's just, at least when I was there, I gathered this kind of like community built around music. And when the weather gets bad, people go indoors. And traditionally, the only thing you could do indoors was play music, especially before electricity. And so there was just kind of this, I don't know, it felt like I was participating in a time-honored social practice of playing music in a pub.
Yeah, it sounds like that was kind of an introduction to the culture.
It was as much a cultural experience as anything else. It's a lot of fun. It was also a lot of fun.
One quick question too, I forgot to ask back to the history. Is there a certain area of history that you're focusing in, or that you like
Yes,
the most?
I'm the part of history that I keep coming back to is 20th century American history. So recent history, stuff that a lot of people still remember. And the part of it that I usually study is, which ties into my concentration, peace and justice studies, is labor history. Tends to be what I study. And I think part of that actually goes back to the music, because a lot of folk music is music that was from the working class. A lot of unions have used folk songs to advance their cause. A lot of songs, come from working on like a railroad. There's the song I've been working on a railroad. A lot of it's working class labor music.
It sounds like it's a great intersection.
It is. I mean, it's right at the crossroads of music and history, and there's even some politics in there as well, because a lot of the songs have political motives. You could even tie it in, I think, with a communications major, with communicating through song and using it as a medium. I mean, it has all kinds of applications. It's really neat. It still astounds me. It's one of the things I constantly never get tired of thinking about. A lot of things bore me, but folk music never does.
Now, you talked about kind of communication, and I know you've been able to really incorporate a lot of things in your Roanoke. So tell me a little bit about the book that you have begun, and kind of where you're at with that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I started in high school as a senior Right about the same time that I got into folk music, I started writing a collection of short stories that were in the same vein of kind of fictional, but based on real experiences or based on history. So they were creative pieces, but they were all based in what I try my best to make historically accurate representations of what I think is one of the most misrepresented periods of history, the American West. I always loved the Wild West, but you've seen one, in a sense you've seen them all. There's the same kind of formula, the same characters you see, the gunslinger, the posse. And I learned that a lot of that came from a very elitist interpretation of the West. So people like Wyatt Earp, who was very famous, he was at the OK Corral, shot a lot of people, made a lot of money in gambling. He moved to Hollywood in the 1912 1912 I think was when he was active, and he started making movies, was consulting on movies. So he helped to kind of manufacture the West that a lot of people today recognize, like Django Unchained or, I don't know, 3:10 to Yuma, to name a few, the John Wayne image. When in reality, a lot of the West was populated by, there were a lot of black cowboys. There were a lot of Mexican cowboys. The entire idea of the cowboy is a Mexican folk archetype. And let alone the women, who really aren't represented in modern Western, the genre. And that bothered me, so I decided I was gonna fix this. And I'm still working on the collection now, but the goal is when it's done to have a collection of stories that is just as exciting as the genre and is just as sensational. There's still the heartbreak, the romance, the violence. I mean, all the stuff that made the West, which it really was, an interesting period in American history, but includes historically underrepresented actors, like women, Mexican cowboys, all the African Americans who went out west. And that's gonna be, I hope, a summer scholars project that I work on, and if not that, then an honors project. And the goal is to incorporate that. By the time I graduate, I wanna have the book and some more CDs, some more music recordings, some projects under my belt. So when I think about my time at Roanoke on the whole, it all comes down to equipping myself to become a better ambassador and performer of the music, as well as a student of the music. So I want to be able to be more effective at bringing new people in and sharing the music with them. But I also want to be more equipped to know how to study the music myself and keep educating myself when I'm outside the structure of Roanoke. Anyway.
Now you talked about, you mentioned the honor, been like to be in the honors program since you've been at Roanoke. What kind of experience have you had?
It's been a good experience. For a while, I wondered if it was a good idea, to be honest, if I not bitten off more than I could chew, but if it was just the right thing for me, because I never lived in honors housing. A lot of the students freshman year lived in honors housing. I was in the international housing, so I would go to New Hall and I would use their fine, nice, spotless facilities, but I never lived there, so I was kind of outside of that. And I still had honors classes with but I was never in the living community. So for a while, I wondered if this was something that was really for me. And then that question was answered after, I guess about last year. After so many semesters, it becomes really nice to have a class every semester where you're with the same people. It becomes nice to have classmates who are reliable, who you've grown with. I mean, I still have classes to this day with people who I met day one, which I wouldn't have had really had I not been in the honors program. And that's been really nice. I think a lot of the opportunities for leadership or for involvement on campus wouldn't have come to fruition if I hadn't been in the honors program, which in turn would have made it more difficult for me to get the Fulbright. I mean, so in kind of a roundabout way, I can trace a lot of what I've been able to do here in my involvement back to the honors program in some way. So I'm grateful to the program, even though I never lived in Newhall.
It was still a good thing to do.
Definitely. It really was. It really was. I think my mom was the one who kind of encouraged me to do it, and I saw my name and was like, okay. And she was right. I mean, mama knows best. You know, that's the old folk adage. It was a really good idea. Yeah.
And, you know, looking a little ahead, like maybe another year,
Okay.
a year and a half.
Yeah.
Okay, so you just graduated from Roanoke. What are you thinking about everything? Where do you think you're gonna? Do you have any ideas about the music, the history?
I was actually asked the same. I had my graduation review yesterday at the registrar's, and she asked me Miss Russell asked me the same question. And so right now, what I'm hoping to do is, by the time I graduate, I'll have a marketable collection of projects from the CDs to the book, enough to start me off on some sort of touring circuit or some kind of. It'll put me in a position where I can travel, at least semi-professionally, and continue the things that I've been doing here, in terms of learning about folk history, folk culture, specifically music, and then sharing and performing. I work on that pretty much 24/7. When I go home for breaks, I do a lot of music. Summer vacation is a lot of playing. I've already started planning for May, for example. I've got some dates in North Carolina, which is pretty cool. It's last summer I got a manager, and so everything's kind of snowballing. And my hope is that it'll continue on that trajectory up until when I graduate. I'll be in a place where I can sustain it.
Now, do you write your own music?
I do. The first CD I have is called Fundamental Folk, and that was the one I mentioned we recorded in the basement. And that's a collection of mainly old folk stories. There are a couple more modern ones that I didn't write any of them, but all the songs are written by other people. But the most recent, I think, is like the 60s, and the oldest is like the 1850s. So it's a range. And I'm playing all the instruments, the banjo and harmonica and all that, guitar. And those are, to me, it's like a folk 101. It's like a introductory. And it was, I guess you could call it the basement tapes. It was recorded in Will's basement. But the last one is Space Cowboy, and that's all original. And that one was cool too. I was playing on that. Bill Spar, who's no longer here, he used to be head of maintenance. He played bass on that one, which was really cool. I got one of my favorite things about Roanoke. They don't do it as much as they used to, but there used to be like a faculty staff like jam band, and they let me come in and play with them. They were very inclusive, which was really nice. I'm an old soul, so when they brought me in, I felt so much more at home. It was really nice of them to do that, so I met Bill that way. And when I started recording, I asked him if he would want to play bass, and he said yes. So he played, and then Will played some on it as well. It's a Roanoke CD. It's a Roanoke collection. I wrote all the songs, but it wouldn't have really come to completion if it hadn't been within this community, where I knew so many musicians and a guy who owned a studio and gave me a good deal and all, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but you didn't expect you would find that when you were.
I did not. I thought that's the kind of thing that I always thought I'd have to go to a big city to find. In my mind, the recording industry has always seemed very exclusive, and maybe in a sense it is, but the connections I made here have allowed me to like circumvent that and just self-produce stuff or make stuff on my own. It's really nice. It's nice, and it's also nice because Will's in a space now where he and I are both, I would say we're both semi-professional. I don't know if we're amateur anymore, but we're learning. There's still a lot to learn. So it's given me some flexibility we can make mistakes. We can be collaborative and grow as artists and as music engineers. It's been very productive, as opposed to being in a very structured, rigid, professional environment where I think I would have been cast to the curb a long time ago.
You see yourself where you're at now? It seems like you've really come pretty far since you came
Yeah,
to Roanoke.
I'm so bad at looking at the future because, I look at the past and things have changed so much. I'm no longer looking into law, I'm looking into folk music. And so I don't know where the future will take me. I'm generally fairly optimistic. I think about it a lot, but I don't know. That's okay.
One thing to think about, or actually I'm going to ask your opinion on, so if you were sitting here having a conversation with a student who's looking to come to Roanoke
Yes.
College, a high school student,
Yeah.
how, let's say if they were to sit down and say, high student
Mhm.
here at Roanoke, like based on what you've been through already, your last almost 3 years, how would you describe to them?
I would say the most important thing is, and I mean, I don't say this much because it's not something people like to hear around campus, but make friends find people who you're kindred spirits with, not necessarily people who share a lapel pin or a Greek shirt. Find people who really are compatible with you, and that's hard to do. I spent a lot of time searching. I spent a lot of time trying to find people who were kind of kindred spirits, and it's not everybody, but it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile to spend time finding quality people who challenge you and make you better creatively, or who are supportive. That to me has been the most important thing. You can get a lot out of college by finding allies who are just like you, trying to find your path while not conforming to the path that other people would like to have you on, and not wearing the things that other people would like you to wear, that kind of thing. That's what I would say.
And if you were to look back and just kind of sum up your Roanoke College experience, in like a few sentences or so, how would you describe your personal experience?
In a few sentences.
I mean, it doesn't have to be a few sentences, but just
Yeah. It's as many times as there are affirmations for the good things that you do, there's exponentially more moments of trial. You'll spend a lot more time hoping something good will come of what you're doing than you will experiencing the rewards. And that's not to say the rewards don't feel great, because it's worthwhile, but there are trials, and it's not an easy. It's more of a pilgrimage or a quest to constantly reevaluate where you are, where you want to be going. It's by no means a straight path to anywhere.
How do you think Roanoke helps students find that path?
For me, it was the professors being told that my advisor, Dr. Henold, one of the first meetings I had with her as my advisor, I was still an economics major, and it was the first time I'd ever heard somebody not say, what do you want to do, or what job do you want to pursue, but what is your vocation? And that subtle choice of word reframed how I thought about what I was doing, and put things in more of in a sense of fulfilling a purpose rather than meeting a bottom line or something like that. And so for me, it was the professors. I think that could be true for a lot of people, is having access to role models or people who are there to advocate for you or help you find your way without making you, there's a difference between, I guess, encouragement and support and gentle guidance than command and control. And that's been crucial here for me.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add that we didn't talk about? We talked about things.
Well, let me think. I mean, it wouldn't be fair if I didn't say, and I don't know if this will even get on the video, but it wouldn't be fair if I didn't say how grateful I am and how much I owe my family at home for always being supportive of me. An important support system back at home as well as here for me has been very important through all the late nights of homework and like the Fulbright application especially. That was like a class in and of itself. and just life management. So I would say don't discount. I would encourage people not to discount the importance of their family. That and a shameless self-plug. I would I would encourage people to check out my the music I've done so far. There's Space Cowboy on Bandcamp is the newest one, the original one, and when you hear it, it's not just me; it's the whole Roanoke, folk community, all four of us. It's on Bandcamp, Space Cowboy. Yeah, the reason I like that is it's more exciting than folk music because folk is old, and it's such a foreign word for a lot of people. And when I think of, plus I think people, Cosmic American's a buzzword. Obviously, it's got two different words: American, which people usually, if most people, at least in this country, identify themselves as American, so you immediately bring it home to what they are, and use the word cosmic. It's interesting because it's a futuristic word. You think of space, but it's also, to me, it invokes timelessness as well, which is what the music is. It's retrospective as well as when I try and make it progressive, looking forward. So I didn't actually coin the term, but I heard it and I thought that's what it is.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, it's great to say what it is.
It's so hard to talk to people my age and be like, I like folk music.
Right.
'Cause
You know, his brother like.
Mm-hmm.
Could say cosmic.
Exactly, and that's what I have on the Bandcamp thing is to me, it just sounds, from a marketing standpoint.
Right.
But especially with country music, because country music, everybody has an idea of country music as like four-wheelers and fried chicken and all kinds of things. And that's just. I think that's the grave country music's dug for itself. I mean, I think that's where it is. But
Are you a country music fan?
I love country music, and when I say that, I like old country, like Johnny Cash. The stuff they have today is really kind of country pop. Yeah, it's exactly, and that's not to say that it's bad music, but I think it's lost a lot of the integrity of what it used to have. But
Yeah, definitely. I was gonna guess that you probably were Johnny Cash.
I love Johnny Cash, Merle Haggard, Willie Nelson, the old guys.
The old. Because of because of your interest.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
old,
yeah. They're old folks. I mean, and to me, they lived it. They grew up like picking cotton. Merle Haggard was in jail as a kid. I mean, all that good stuff. So the music comes from a real place.
No, I think that your stories sound awesome.
Thank you.
I need to come hear you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, y'all. Thank you.
I can tell you're a good storyteller.
I love to spin a yarn. I do like to tell stories.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you.